Hello, my friends. I am Jaime Elizondo from Real World Ranching, and I'd like to share something that makes me a little vulnerable with you today, as I believe this is a story that many ranchers can relate to. It's about the time I thought I was doing everything right, only to realize that I was actually headed in the wrong direction. When I started down the regenerative path years ago, like in 1991, I was convinced I was on the right track. I rotated pastures like they told me. I built more fences than I cared to count. I cut it back on fertilizers and chemicals because they were costly, and that seemed like the progressive thing to do. I was following the advice that seemed responsible, sustainable, and modern. And I will be honest, it looked good on paper, so I thought I was checking all the boxes. But the pain is that after all that effort, my soil was still tired. My grass wasn't getting any better. In fact, it looked like it was getting worse. And what's the bad part of this? I was feeding more hay than ever. If you have ever been in that spot, you know exactly how it feels. There I was investing in infrastructure, more fences, more water lines, a more expensive corral. I was investing in inputs, minerals, seeds, bulls, supplements, and I was investing time moving cattle around, keeping records, trying to do it right. However, every time I ran the numbers, my costs continued to climb. My pastures looked weaker. My soil was more compacted than it had been before, and when winter rolled around, the hay bill came knocking like a debt collector I couldn't avoid. It was frustrating, deeply frustrating, to pour so much sweat, money, and intention into the ranch and feel like nothing was moving forward. I thought maybe it's my soil. Maybe my land just wasn't cut out for this. Maybe my environment was too harsh. Perhaps I just needed more. More seed, more inputs, more technology. But the harder I tried, the further behind I felt. And then, almost by accident, I stumbled onto the truth. I discovered what happens when you graze the way nature intended. Not just rotating a herd, not just checking a box on rest period, but grazing completely and intentionally, learning the difference between a rest period and a recovery period. You see, it doesn't matter if I gave a 100-day rest to a pasture if it didn't rain, right? Recovery is about regrowth under good growing conditions, not when plants cannot grow. So I began to realize that my mistake wasn't that I wasn't working hard enough. My mistake was that I was copying systems that looked regenerative on the outside, but didn't actually mimic nature at the core. And maybe you can relate to this. Nature doesn't practice top grazing. Nature doesn't give animals the freedom to pick and choose the sweetest leaves while ignoring the rest. Nature never left a pasture looking uneven, half grazed and half wasted. When the great herds moved, they grazed it all. Then they left, and they didn't come back until the grass had recovered. This is common sense. Why would they move before that? Why would they expend precious energy in migrating where there was a lot of grass left behind? That realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I was not failing because I was lazy. I was not failing because my land was poor. I was failing because I was managing against the way grasslands were designed to function. So I tried something different. I began practicing what I now call total grazing. Instead of letting the cows cherry pick the top bites, I managed them so they graze everything evenly, from top to bottom, stem and leaf, before moving on. Not overgraze, not starved, but complete and intentional use of the forage. And the changes that followed were almost unbelievable. Suddenly, forage exploded. It was as if my pastures had woken up from a long nap. The weeds that had been creeping in year after year dropped back, crowded out by strong, vigorous grasses. My cattle began to improve in body condition and not just holding steady. And maybe, just as important, my confidence grew. For the first time, I was not guessing if what I was doing would work. I could actually see the land responding. I remember walking out one morning after a full season of total grazing and just standing there in awe. I thought, this is what I have been working for all along. Why couldn't I see this sooner? Now let me clear about something. This was not luck. It wasn't that I had a wet year. It wasn't that I planted some miracle seed. It wasn't that I stumbled onto some magical mineral mix. What happened was simple. I started working with the way nature designed grasslands to function. And here is the best part. It's not just my story. I've seen the same transformation happen with farmers across the US, Mexico, Spain, New Zealand, Australia, and parts of Europe, South Africa. I have observed this in humid, dry, and hot or cold climates. When they stop grazing and begin practicing total grazing, the results show up every single time. It's not a gamble, it's a system that you can learn, apply, and repeat year after year. And I have had students tell me, we run out of cows, we need to double our herd just to keep up with the extra forage we're growing. I used to think it was normal to buy hay every year. Now we're grazing into the winter and the savings are unreal. Or this one, my land looks better, my cattle are calmer, and for the first time, I feel like this is sustainable. It works. This is not theory. This is happening right now in real ranches with real ranchers just like you. I share this story because I know how heavy the frustration feels. I know how it feels to feel stuck, doing all the right things and still watching your costs climb while your land declines. And I don't want you to waste years, like I did, before realizing that there is a better way. And that is why I teach total grazing. That is why I built the Total Grazing Academy, because I have seen the difference it makes, not just in land and cattle, but in people themselves. When you finally see your land respond, when you see grass abundance instead of scarcity, when you can cut that hay bale and still have cattle in good body condition, everything changes. So here is my invitation to you. Enrollment for the Total Grazing Academy opens again at the end of November with the best pricing of the year. I don't keep the academy open year-round because most of my focus is on coaching the ranchers who are already inside. That's why this November window will be the final opportunity in 2025 to join. If you have been reading this and thinking, that's me. I've been working hard but not moving forward. I want my land to respond like that. Then, now is the time to take action. Make sure you're on the wait list so you don't miss it when doors open. rwranching.com/waitlist. I'd love to see you inside, and I'd love for you to experience that same moment of realization that ranching doesn't have to be about scarcity, frustration, and high hay bills. It can be about abundance, confidence, and a sense of peace of mind. I thought I was doing everything right, and maybe you feel that way too. But the truth is, sometimes doing more of the same will not get you different results. Sometimes you have to stop and ask, am I really grazing the way nature intended? For me, the answer changed everything, and it can for you too. Until next time, and have a blessed day with your family and your land.